Hey everyone, we're back for the next part of this Old Testament Judaism. We left off with um, the brothers having to slink back to Jacob and admit that they lost Benjamin and that Jacob, sorry, had to come back to get Benjamin, and so he does. But in the meantime, of course, Joseph reveals himself to Benjamin, and they are reunited. They go to Chuck E. Cheese, whatever. And so when the brothers and Jacob come back to Egypt, Joseph reveals himself to them, and there's a huge reconciliation. And this is the end of the book of Genesis. So we move on into the book of Exodus, so where we learn about Moses, who is the most important person in regards to um, the all of Judaism, because it's Moses who gives the law to the Jewish people, the structure by which they have their moral life. So he's born at a tough time. So after Joseph, they all stay in Egypt and they go to the land of Goshen, which is like right next door, and God blesses them, and not just one person, but blesses each one of those 12 brothers. Each has their own clan, has their own family, and that family expands and turns into whole tribes of people. So now you have the 12 tribes of Israel, and they're known as the Israelites, right? And so they're settled in Egypt. But after 200 years, the pharaohs have turned over with the different dynasties, and the people that had been helped by Joseph and respecting the Israelites for saving Egypt are long gone. So now you just have these pharaohs who are trying to control Egypt, and then they have this huge group of Israelites over there, making them a little nervous that they could take over at any time. So they put the Israelites into slavery, and they help build all their big projects. And um, and it gets to the point where they're still growing. And so the Pharaoh decides, I'm going to kill all the firstborn children, or firstborn sons in Israel, of these Israelites, in order to thin out the herd so they can't cause any trouble and take over. Well, this is where we find Moses being born. A little boy. He and his mother are trying to stay on the run. He's like a little infant, and this is where, as you see up there, I guess, um, him being put in a basket and being sent out onto the Nile as the soldiers were coming, so to attempt to try to save this baby. And what happens is that Moses floats deeper into Egypt to the palace itself, and one of the daughters of the Pharaoh finds this baby and takes him as her own, and she calls him Moses, which means drawn out of the water. And so he grows up as a prince of Egypt in the palace, and things are going well. But at some point, we realize that as Moses is um, kind of growing up, he discovers that he, in fact, is an Israelite. We don't know exactly how he does this. And then one day, as he's watching the slave drivers whip mercilessly the Israelite slaves, he gets really upset by this, and he goes up and he struggles with the slave driver, and he ends up killing him in some way. And so in this young prince has to go on the run, and he leaves Egypt and he goes off into the desert, and he finds a place with a group called the Midianites, and they're just kind of wandering nomadic people that are pretty good, and he finds a home there. And when he's tending the sheep and things are going well, he finds a wife, and her name is Zipporah, and so he's tending the sheep, and it's late in the year, so that you have to go higher elevation to find vegetation for the animals. So they're up in the mountain, and all of a sudden this bush he sees is glowing on fire, but the bush is not burning up, so it's a burning bush. And he hears a voice say to him, Moses, come closer and remove your sandals, for the ground in which you stand is holy. And here we have God dialoguing with Moses. And he tells Moses, I want you to go back and I want to Egypt and I've heard the cries of Egypt and I want to set them free. And you are going to be the tool that I use to do that. And Moses was like, that's not me. I am not a good person to do this. It's even suggested that Moses had a stutter. Um, and Moses was like, I don't even know like what God you are. Like, who am I going to tell them sent me? Right. And here we have a really important part of the Bible where Moses is told the name of God. God says that his name is Yahweh, which means I am who am, which doesn't sound like it means anything. It's almost like a blow off, like I am who I am. Just don't bother. Don't worry about it. Or it means, if we look a little deeper, you can see the idea of I am is the sense of being. I am the God who is and is here right now. Not I was or I will be, but I am. I am with you. Right. And that goes into so much of what we were talking about with Joseph Campbell and the idea of transcendence, being present, recognizing the transcendence in our moment, in the field of time. And so it's kind of a powerful, powerful expression, the name of God. And so what happens is Moses agrees and he goes back to Egypt. And he approaches the Pharaoh and says, listen, you need to let my people go. And the Pharaoh scoffs at this. And uh, God brings about 10 plagues upon Egypt. And you have them there. It turns water to blood in all of Egypt. A descent of frogs all over the land, fleas and flies. Disease kills all the livestock, boils and sores on all the people. Hail and locusts, darkness taking 3 days. And finally, the Pharaoh's like, listen, if you come back and I see you again, I'm going to kill you. And so God tells Moses, listen, you've got to go and tell all the Israelite people that they need to listen and they need to do what I tell them. First of all, get ready to leave because tomorrow Pharaoh will let you all out of Egypt. And he will because this next plague will be so bad. And what the people need to do is pack and be ready to leave at a moment's notice. And I also need you to celebrate a meal. This is going to be the meal of Passover. What's going to happen is you're going to take a lamb to be sacrificed, and if a family is too poor, come together with other families and share if you need to. And I want you to take the blood of that lamb, move this over here, and I want you to put it on the doorposts and the lintel, and wipe the blood of that lamb on the door, so that I'm going to send the angel of death throughout the land of Egypt to kill all of the firstborn children. And if the angel sees your door with the blood on it, it will pass over. That's the name. Pass over your house and not kill your children. And so this is what they do. And there's a number of different other kinds of things. They're herbs, and they started to bake the bread because they had been there for 200 years. They've got to pack to leave the next day. They don't have time to let the bread rise, so the bread that they baked and have yeast. And this is matzah bread. They were supposed to eat while dressed for the road, so they weren't supposed to just kind of take. They're supposed to wear their coat, their coat, um, symbolize the fact that we're leaving. So they have this meal. The angel of death comes in, kills all the firstborn in Egypt, and passes over the Israelite people's houses. And Pharaoh says, and even his kid is killed. Off you go. I don't want you here. And so he leaves the Israelites to go out of the land of Egypt.